All right, Rita.
Yes.
Rita, where did you grow up? Where are you from originally?
Los Angeles, California. Born at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital.
What year were you born?
1933.
So that makes you
90.
90.
On my way to 91.
Good for you. Tell me about your childhood. How did you grow up?
I grew up at Pico in Fairfax, and my 7-year-old girlfriend and I, who I was 7 too, used to take the Fairfax bus to the May Company, Wilshire. And we'd go sit at the top of the 5th floor and watch the people that came up the escalator. And it was so much fun for Fern and I. And we just came every day because it was fun until we were found out. Then it wasn't fun. Because my mother, God bless her, never got out of bed, not to go to school with me or for me, not to do anything. She had a full-time housekeeper for 18 years, and Freddie really, literally raised me.
What was wrong with your mom that she didn't get out of bed?
She was just ill, both in the body and definitely in her head. She and my father were so different that it was hysterical because he was tall and good looking and ran a big business even through the war, because the government came to him when the war started and said, if you'll convert your factory into uniforms, I will promise you that the USA will give you $1 million, not really, but we'll give you the fabric for a lovely group of black dresses, which women will absolutely devour because they are so frustrated from the wartime not being able to get anything that was attractive that they'll buy it. So my dad did exactly that. The government gave him 50,000 yards of black, I believe it was rayon, but I'm not sure about that. We'll even try to advise you on what the dress might want to look like, because there are definite styles that women have not been able to buy. And the little black dress, you know, that phrase, and that's exactly what you should make. And you could do anything preparatory to it, and you'll be ready for it. But it's really the truth, because women have been so lackluster when it comes to clothes. They can't get anything that's sexy. And that's what they want, because the men are gone. They're fighting a war.
World War II was going on.
Pardon me?
World War II was going on.
Yes, that was it. I was 9 years old the day the war started. My father and I were visiting his mother, who lived at the beach. And so she sent us to the neighborhood store that had only small number of things. It was a very tiny little place, but it did have milk. So my grandmother asked for a quart of milk. And so my father and I started to walk down the little path. This was a house on Beach Avenue. And we walked on the boardwalk, and it was like like this, and it went right into a market, a little teeny market. But who was on the radio? President Roosevelt. He was telling us all that the Japanese had just bombed Pearl Harbor and wiped out the fleet, practically. And so that was my first lesson in war or wartime. So my father was very upset, agitated that something like that would happen now to us. I was 9. And so he said, I'll take you downtown to the building. My father and my grandfather owned a large building in Little Tokyo.
I used to do Google searches for my own name, and I was always really disturbed what I'd find. Seeing my personal information out there for anyone to grab, it's just uncomfortable. That's why I've started using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura not only shows me which data brokers are peddling my info, but also takes action by sending opt-out requests on my behalf. Data brokers are making a fortune by selling our personal information to anyone willing to pay for it. It's not just harmless information and marketing stuff. They're selling everything from your email, home address, to your health records, even details about your relatives. Cleaning up my digital footprint isn't just avoiding scam emails. It's about protecting myself from potential hackers who could exploit that information and wreak havoc on my life. And recently, AT&T revealed that over 73 million customer records of both existing and former customers were released onto the dark web. They recommend those affected use strong passwords, monitor account activity, and consider credit freezes or fraud alerts from credit bureaus. Well, Aura does all of this for me. And best of all, I don't have to download several different apps just because a company couldn't keep my data secure. If my info was compromised in the AT&T data breach, I wouldn't worry because Aura is always on, always doing the hard work of keeping me safe. From antivirus protection to VPN and password management, Aura's got it all covered. It's like having a digital security guard on duty 24/7. I'm too busy to deal with this stuff, but with Aura, I can go about my day knowing that my privacy is being safeguarded, leaving me free to focus on what really matters. So if you value your privacy as much as I do, go to aura.com/softwhiteunderbelly to start your 14-day free trial. The link is in the video description box below. And now back to the video.
But they were taking the Japanese away. So it wasn't, so this was a different day than when I heard President Roosevelt, make the announcement. And the different day that my father took me downtown to the building, which I had been to before, but not many times, and I had little remembrance of what it was or, what it wasn't was. It wasn't. And so he took me down to the building maybe a week or two later. And as we drove into the complex, which was just straight on East First Street, it's still there, by the way, and the military was driving trucks into the area because it was primarily a Japanese area. It was called Little Tokyo. And my first remembrance of that was awful because I had been taken to the building many times, and I had observed that there were a great deal of Japanese in the area, and in our building, it was almost all Japanese. And the first floor, remember Florsheim Shoes? Well, that was the tenant on the window of the first floor. And he had every kind of Florsheim shoes you could think of. And what was impressive was that there was an army truck there. and they were loading Japanese into the truck. And what was so upsetting to me was I knew this little old man because he was the first tenant we had. And why he was the first tenant we had, I have no reason to know. But he was like maybe 5'2" or 3. He was a little tiny man. And my dad said he was 98 or something like that, and that they were taking him away to a containment camp. And we all know what that turned into, and it was pretty terrible and upsetting for me to see this little 98-year-old man being helped up this ladder, and he could hardly walk anyway. What do you do when you're 98? I don't know. I'm not, almost going to 91, and I'm feeling that way. Anyway, so he was a sweet old man.
What do you remember of World War II? How did it change your life?
Oh, how did it change my life? Well, when I heard that Pearl Harbor was bombed, it didn't mean much to me because I didn't know where it was. I mean, I was 9, so I had never been to Hawaii. My parents never went anywhere except Palm Springs. And so when I saw Mr. Nishikubo climbing up into that truck, aided by a soldier, I was pretty upset because that little man we always went in and talked to. We brought him a goodie that was American instead of Japanese. And it really upset my 9-year-old way of thinking. So that was what I had to deal with first about the war. Anyway, so I said, "What does this mean, Daddy? Are they going to do something to those people or send them back to Japan?" He said, "Well, we'll have to wait and see. It's too early. But this bombing just happened yesterday or today. So that's what the government feels, that the Japanese are our enemy." And, you know, I'm not sure that I believe that they are our enemy, but we'll have to wait and see. It's an interesting time in my 9-year-old life. And he said, "I'll take you up to the camp when I find out where it is." So that was my promise, and it was nice because I wanted to follow that little man that I grew up with, really. And so that was first in the war that touched me. And then I said, when Germany got involved, which was very soon after, and actually France too, but that was only because Germany attacked France. So it was a question of, are they against us or with us? So we had to wait. I had to wait a long time to find that out because it wasn't clear. So anyway, I went to a lot of bond rallies. They used to run rallies in public places, in large public places, and people like Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby would come and sing and entertain people, hoping that they would put out money for bonds. And even that early in the war, it worked. Frank Sinatra came all the time. He was very democratic. And Bing Crosby was not, but he came just to pretend to be with us. And Germany got in really, really quick. And I knew that we had Germans living upstairs from us. We lived in a duplex in the Pico Fairfax area. And when my father told me that they were German upstairs, I said, maybe that is why at night when I'm sleeping, I get awakened by a tap, tap, tap sound. And he says, what do you mean? I said, maybe they're sending messages back to Germany. He said, you know, hon, that's clever. I'm really proud of your thinking. And I was only 9, so I mean, it was a stretch. And the next day, my father called the FBI. And they came about a day later or two and came on, took them away. That was really amazing to me. I never thought, things like that happened. And so they came and took them away, and as they walked down the stairs, I looked at their faces, and I said, yeah, they don't look very friendly. It was funny, but not funny. And then, we went, my parents and my aunt and my uncle were very busy with democratic projects. We raised war bonds, we rolled bandages. My mother and I rolled bandages and made boxes for soldiers that would have things that they would need or want in it. And that was very intriguing for a 9-year-old girl. And it just got bigger projects as the war went on, because we wanted it over. Women did not want a war. I mean, they missed their men. They missed everything about their life. And so that was...
And the war lasted 6 years.
Yeah.
How did things change during those 6 years?
Well, we couldn't buy things that we wanted or needed, like groceries. A certain number of things we could buy, but there was really not a great variety. So, I mean, they sent shipments to the soldiers all the time, constantly. And anything for the Red Cross needed was immediately shipped. So it was out of the stores. So when you walked into a market, there was little on the shelves. And that was shocking, to a 9-year-old girl. So I think that was nearly blew my mind, to say the least. When I was taking the bus from my house, not really from my house, but from the corner, and going down to a market to do some shopping for my mother's housekeeper, a man was sitting on the bus behind me, and he said, I mean inside the bus, but he's the seat behind me. Anyway, he said he was talking to his friend, and he was talking about the war and about what it meant to him. And he said, if those goddamn Jews weren't over in Germany and all the middle countries, we wouldn't be in this mess. The goddamn c***s. Well, I knew that word, and I was only 9. I knew the word, but I was told by my father not to use it because it was derogatory to our religion. And so I sat down in my seat and tried to forget what the man said, and I couldn't forget it. And I said, tell me what you said. And he said, oh, those goddamn c***s. And I went like this. Pew! And he didn't know what hit him. It was stupid. I wasn't that strong. I don't know why I precipitated it. It could have been a bad scene for me, but it was bad enough because I felt awful and I was highly insulted, and I just walked off the bus. Fortunately, he had to stop, so he stopped and I got out. And it was a real lesson and experience for me. The only reason I knew the word was because at some of the big meetings that the Democrats had, they'd have a person that was anti-democratic, and they always related it to Jews. I don't know why. I don't really think that was a proper, put together. It didn't have to be somebody Jewish. It was just that somebody made up their mind that that's what the reason was, just like Adolf Hitler. So, and I knew that, so.
You guys had television back then?
No, not yet.
Not yet?
No. About maybe a year later or 2 years later, we had, we had the television that was this big,
Black
and
and white.
the entire neighborhood wanted to come in because they knew we had one, and it was a great big cabinet and this little anyway, it was fun to go to the rallies because there were always important people there, and something about me must have been attractive because Frank Sinatra, who was sitting in the first row, 7th seat. How do I remember that? I don't know. But he said, "You're a really pretty girl. Why don't you come sit on my seat, on my lap?" And I said, "Dad?" He said, "Oh, go, it's no big deal." And later in my life, I learned it was a big deal and I shouldn't have done it, but that's that.
You sat on Frank Sinatra's lap.
Yeah,
Wow.
when I was 9. 7th seat in the row. I counted that. I got out, when I got off his lap, I went over and stood, and which was too funny even to me.
When the war ended, did things change dramatically?
Absolutely.
Tell me how things changed.
Well, they exchanged uniforms. I mean, from my dad's factory, he had 60, I think, seamstresses. And then he had like 10 cutters, and there's some women that just finished the garments, and they delivered to a certain place the finished uniforms. And then when the war was over, the day it ended, you can't even believe it because it's too hard to believe, they delivered 50,000 yards of black rayon crepe is the word for the fabric. And my dad's designer designed a dress with a flap over top like here, slit up to here, and string sleeves. But they weren't sleeves, they were just to hold the dress up. And it did exactly what they told him it would do. Every woman in America had a Karl Naftel black dress. And I have the ads, some of them, and the girls have some of them. And her daughter, which is a funny little story, has nothing to do with the war, but it's so cute. It was hard to find a Karl Naftel label after he gave up the uniforms, because they didn't have to use them if they didn't want to. They didn't go with the uniforms, but they went with the regular dresses, which he made, I don't know how many, but do you remember, Randy? I think he made 40 or 30 or 40,000 of these little black dresses. And it was an immediate hit. And you can see them hanging in certain things that record old things. And that's the way, I think, isn't that the way Hannah found it?
They sell them on eBay.
eBay.
They're
So,
collector items.
huh?
They are collector's items.
And she bought one, but it wasn't the black. It was a different color. And she was so excited when she did it that she immediately called me. And I think I called her mother. And it was hysterical to see her daughter wearing a wartime dress. And it was, she was so thrilled to buy it on eBay.
What were things like in 1945 when the war ended? How did life change in the United States?
How did it change again? Well, things got a little easier in general. The things that had been out of the markets or out of the other stores reappeared. When my father used to go to work on Saturday, it was a day for friends and relatives to come down and buy a dress if they wanted to. I had them in my house for years, every day, and I had a whole clientele, that came, which was really not right, I admit. I got the money and then gave half of the money to my father. And that was not right because that was depriving stores of what they exactly wanted at that time. So my dad said, don't go out of your way to tell anybody. Just do what you're doing and it'll be all right. And sure enough, my neighbor across the street reported me to a big chain of stores. And she said, they'll never buy from Carl Naftal again or his daughter. They didn't seem to understand that. They came to me. I had like 300 clients, which was sizable for just a house. And they loved getting the deal that I gave them, which was just a bit over wholesale.
Do you remember the day the war ended?
Oh yeah, but can I remember now? Sweetheart, I'm 90. It's hard to remember things that happen.
But certainly morale changed.
Oh, absolutely.
In the country.
Yeah, in the country, the morale was much boosted, and women were thrilled. They had a black dress, and my father got into manufacturing all the other things, I mean dresses that he made normally. And that was fun. And that was really one of my favorite experiences because it was the first real modeling I had ever done. I had done all kinds of little stuff, but I'd never been in a major manufacturer's place where he wanted me to model for his clients. That was great because I worked all the stores in Beverly Hills, you know, Saks, Magnums, all of them. And what wasn't in Beverly Hills, I worked there too, because I had no problem getting work. And my girls were never left with babysitters. They were left with my mother's housekeeper. And she was reliable, and she adored them. And that was terrific. And that was the best thing that my family ever did for me because I did earn money that way. And I also got new clothes. And I was married 3 times, and my husband's never had to buy me clothes. I mean, I had more than I needed. Did that stop me? No.
The economy recovered nicely after the war.
Well, yes, after that war, it seemed to recover quite well. And if it didn't grow quite as much as people expected, it just took a little longer. And then everything was back in the stores and people were buying like crazy. And then I don't remember the year that Roosevelt said, we have to cut this extraneous buying because it keeps you from working on your own businesses and things like that. And those are the most important because that's our economy. So that was
What was your favorite decade in your life?
I think when I had my children, it was just so absolutely thrilling to have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the fourth one was seriously ill when she was born. She had surgery 2 weeks after she was born. She had, and in addition to what that was, her feet went like that, so they had to put braces on her legs, and they were metal. So every time she moved or touched the rails in her crib, knocked out, a big hunk. And so there came a time when we couldn't leave her in the crib. We had to put her into a different bed and make sure that someone was always watching her. And that was a funny story in itself. She had these disaligned feet. And when the doctor operated on her at 2 weeks, he straightened her legs well because she still can walk, in a straight line and get around okay. But till she was 19 months, she couldn't turn over. And the doctor told us to put her on the floor and let her wriggle across the floor. And everybody was all right with that except my parents. They could not stand to leave her on the floor. So they would pick her up every time she went, ah! Which was dreadful. I mean, really, you can't do that with the baby. They have a good memory, and they don't like that. Anyway, so finally we got her past that stage, and the girls started growing up, and they were a blast.
You have 4 daughters.
Yes, I have 4 daughters, and the last one was the one that had the problem with her legs. But and when she was 19 months, that's when she finally could turn over and almost stand. And then she learned to walk. But it was hard. It was a torturous thing for her. And I mean, it was reminiscent of my birth because I had a serious disease that nobody knew how to treat. It was called celiac disease. And there are a lot of people that have it, but not too many that try to change it or make it different because it's very difficult. It's a whole special menu and nothing with wheat.
It's like
So-
a gluten intolerance.
And that's my whole life. I've been wheat free.
Did you discover?
Primarily.
Did you figure out the correct diet early on, or did you struggle with it?
Well, I was sent to live at in Long Beach at a registered nurse's home, private home, and her daughter, who was also a registered nurse. There were 7 of us, and we were not all celiac. We were all different things. So there wasn't a day that went by that they didn't have to make a run to Children's Hospital with one of us. And it was very sad that I couldn't live at home until I was 6 years old. And I rarely saw my father and my mother, who I described to you. She couldn't come to see me because she didn't drive and she didn't care to learn. So I had a lonely kind of a life until I came home at 6. And then I immediately was placed in school, which I think was a good thing in the end. But it was very difficult because I had never had any training or anything like that. And the kids that were in the place I lived were all different kinds of problems. So I didn't keep in touch with them either, which seems to me ridiculous because I was there for 6 years. And my mother and father rarely could come because my father had the car and he was a traveling salesman. That was before he had his own business. So it was I lived a very peculiar young life. And not to mention the food. I mean, that was really something else. So I lived on skim milk and Jell-O and bananas. That was it. Well, that's celiac. I mean, until I was about 40, there wasn't any decent food. And then when they started making it, they went all out. And I pretty much can eat anything except wheat. And if you know it's wheat, you just don't do it. And my daughters all catch me every time I deviate. And I really am careful. I don't want to suffer because it's not worth it. Why bother?
Who would you say was the love of your life?
The love of my life. Oh. A guy I met this guy who was the second person in my life. The first person in my life was her father, my daughter's father. And he lived next door to me. And he drove my car before I drove it. And I have a magnificent painting that he painted. He was an art student at UCLA. And in his senior year, he painted John F. Kennedy. And I have that picture in my house. And it is an amazing picture. Everybody walks by that picture and goes, "Ah," because it looks more like John F. Kennedy than he did, because Robert was a magnificent painter. Unfortunately, the rest of him wasn't that marvelous. except that I have 4 daughters, and they were all from him. So that's not too bad.
What would you say is your biggest regret?
My biggest regret. It couldn't be marrying Robert, and I've said this 100 times, because I wouldn't have my daughters, and they mean the most to me of anything in my life. My 4 daughters are so special. They're just, and they do anything and everything for me. So I just had a 90th birthday, and I don't know whether you heard anything about it, but the girls took over a brand new hotel in Santa Monica, the Proper. And we had, I think, almost 100 people. And they were all family, pretty much. I didn't get to have most of my friends, but the family was all there, including 2 little babies. And they were the youngest of all our children. And I took pictures. I didn't. My daughter Ronnie did. She hired a fabulous photographer. And don't ask me his name, I don't remember. And he took pictures, very captivating pictures, because it was me in the middle of one group. And as a gift after the party, I gave them each a framed picture of me with them. And it was such a hit that, you know, I have some extras now, and I'm going to take them to an art class that I go to at where I live and give them to my teacher and let her figure out how to cover the writing that we had put on the frames. They're real wood, and it says Rita's 90th, and then it has the date and some little gadgets on the ends. And I think she will make it into a real terrific project, because Kate is just fabulous. She is a known mosaic person. She makes great big mosaics, and they're very expensive. Anyway, that's that part.
Life has changed so much throughout your life. 90 years is a long time. How have things changed? What are the biggest changes you've seen, like between the middle of the 20th century and today?
Well, I think that I have developed a nice group of friends at Brookdale, where I live. And our favorite thing to do is to play mahjong. And I never knew how to play mahjong. My mother never played cards or did anything. And so I never picked it up. And here I am, 90 years old, and I just learned a new game. And it's such a good game. And we play it probably every night after dinner until maybe 8:30. So like from 6:30 to 8:30 or something like that. And sometimes not, but it's an easy game to learn, and it's wonderful to play it. It's fun.
But do you think life is getting more difficult today than it was 40, 50 years ago?
When I was growing up, or
Yeah, like when you were.
I think for younger people, I think it's definitely harder because there's so many rules in place now that you have to obey in order to live the way we live, which is extraordinarily light, if that means anything. It seemed to me that life was harder when we were in the 40s. And you know, it's just my philosophy. My girls were mostly at home. They had boyfriends here and there, and the one that had the one steady one was Robin. She and Paul met when they were 14, and they've been married almost 50 years, from age 14. So that's a pretty good record, for happiness. They have 2 children who have 3 children, and it's wonderful. I just had Robin's oldest daughter over on Monday with the 2 babies. And Owen is 19 months, and the new baby is 5 weeks or 6 weeks. And it's such a different world, and yet it's the same. I think every generation grows up relatively the same way. They have their good things and they have their lousy things. And sometimes the lousy things outweigh the good things, and that's a shame. Like, I didn't tell you that my first date was not my husband, but Joel Gray. You remember him? He lived a block from me, and he used to see me walk past his house on the way to school. And I guess maybe it took him some time to get the courage up to say something. I don't know. So one day he walked to our mutual corner, half a block up from him, half a block from me. And he said, "I'd love to take you to the movies." And I said, "You look like Joel Gray."
Joel Gray, the actor.
Yeah. Actor, dancer, singer.
Yeah, he did many
all
things.
of those things. Yeah, he lived a block from me. And I never saw him before that because I walked that way to school every day. I went to Carthay Center School, which was right on Olympic, and I had to pass his house. So I always credited Robert with my first date, but that's not true. It was Joel Gray at the movies.
What advice would you give to someone in their 20s or 30s who has their whole life ahead of them?
Advice about what in particular?
How to live a life, how to be happy.
Oh, how to be happy. Well, I feel that I have lived a very happy life. I mean, considering all the things that I've been through, I've had many falls and many operations to correct something, but I'm fine. And at 90, I think that I am hopefully over the top with anything more. Randy was saying we have to start making arrangements for your 91st birthday. No way, let's not think that way yet. I'm too young. I don't want to have another birthday yet. So that's, and Ronnie is the one that plans them, and she is miraculous. You would think she was a caterer. She is unbelievable, just unbelievable.
Your family is very important to you.
Pardon me?
Your family is very important to you.
Yeah. We do a lot together. We are very close. I mean, there may be something that we disagree about, and it really never seems to affect our relationship, really. It seems like it at the time. It seems terrible. And then it's gone. And we don't think about it. So that's the way I feel about my life.
All right. Rita, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Did it mean anything to you?
It does. Everyone's story is interesting, and a person who's lived 90 years on this planet certainly is going to be
Thank you.
very interesting.
I'm glad.
Thank you so much for sharing it.
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, that's a joy to me.